Disclaimer: this is audio horror fiction. If darkness or the creatures it holds scares you, leave now. Still listening? Good. Then let's begin. Before I begin, let's get one thing out of the way. I'm a stripper at Bare Assets Exotic Cabaret. An exotic dancer, if you think that sounds classier. Me? I don't care. It's what I do, not who I am. My stage name is Sherbert, in honor of my great uncle Herbert, who died last year. Yeah, I know, it's a weird way to commemorate someone, but whatever, I need a name. Now, I know what some of you must be thinking. No, I'm not damaged goods. My daddy loved me just fine, and I'm not some destitute heroin addict selling myself to get a fix. It's nothing like that. Like a lot of my fellow strippers, I'm a student. This job pays decent enough, and the work hours are great and don't interfere with classes. But this story isn't about my career path. It's a story about a door. A door mostly out of sight from the main area, but visible from up on the stage. A door that, as far as I could tell, only opened when patrons dropped obscenely large stacks of money. A door to a room so private that none of the other girls I asked knew what was on the other side. Yesterday, I went through that door, and this is what I saw. As you probably already guessed, the turnover rate at a strip club is pretty high. Sure, there are a few regulars who stick around for a couple of years, but those girls are the exceptions. It wasn't uncommon for me to show up for my shift only to find one of the girls missing. I'd ask, "Where's Candy?" and someone would reply, "Found herself a sugar daddy." Sometimes it'd be something a little more disgusting, like last week when I asked, "Hey, where's Sherry?" And Ginger replied, "The boss found out she's only 16, got canned." 16 years young. Can you imagine resorting to stripping at that age? Terrible. Thankfully, the boss was vigilant and always managed to catch the underage ones within a few weeks. You know, before too much damage was done. He was a nice enough guy, but he had the worst fashion sense. He'd wear those Bermuda shorts with unbuttoned Hawaiian shirts showing off his curly mane of chest hair, and this gaudy golden medallion with a red gemstone dangling from his beefy neck. He loved that damn medallion so much that he had an identical one on a bust in his office, in case the first one got dirty, I guess. He was mostly normal, if not a little shady looking in the way that all strip club owners look. More importantly, he treated us with respect. At worst, he had playfully slapped one of us on the butt, but aside from that, was very hands off the merchandise. Yesterday, the boss asked me to train Sherry's replacement. I arrived at work about half an hour early to pick out props and stuff, but got distracted by that damn door. For the first time since I started working at Bare Assets, it was left unattended. I know I shouldn't have, but I let my curiosity get the better of me. I walked over and boldly tried the handle. To my surprise, it was unlocked. I quickly glanced around the room to make sure I was still alone before opening the door and stepping into the mysterious room. Inside was a miniature version of our main stage, facing 2 rows of leather recliners, each with their own tray table. The walls were lined floor to ceiling with silky red curtains that curved in the corners. In the back was a bar with bottles filled to the brim and crystal glasses more polished than I'd ever seen at any strip club. Clearly, this was some sort of VIP lounge. I circled around the room, wondering why I'd never been invited to dance here before. Hell, wondering how many girls had lied to my face about getting the opportunity. I was actually a little angry and jealous about it, to be honest. I was about to head back when I noticed one little detail that didn't quite make sense. The stage fed directly into a black concrete wall instead of curtains to conceal a backstage area. As far as I could tell, there was only one door in the room, and I had never seen any of the girls going through it, so I couldn't help but wonder how they got inside for their private shows. It had to be the red curtains, I figured. There must have been a door hidden behind one of them. If I slipped behind the curtains and circled around the room, I could find the entrance and figure out who had been lying to me. That's exactly what I did, but it didn't go quite according to plan. See, I was about 3/4 of the way across the room with nothing but concrete walls to show for my troubles when I heard the doorknob turn. Afraid of getting in trouble, I bolted towards the corner, hoping to hide myself in the gap between the connecting walls and the curved curtains. There was just enough space for me, and since I was standing right where two curtains connected, I was able to see the backs of the sofas and the stage from where I was. The boss walked inside, fanning a wad of $100 bills as he escorted a somewhat young businessman to the front row. "Let's make your first time special," he said. The lights in the room dimmed. I couldn't see it, but I could hear the slimy smile on my boss's face as he continued. "Would you like your very own cherry to pop? I have a new one, ripe and ready for the picking." Disgusting. We all knew these things happened behind closed doors, but up until that point, I'd been able to maintain the false belief that we didn't resort to that kind of business at Bare Assets. The businessman nodded. "Excellent. Let's begin," answered the boss, as he clapped his hands together. Music started playing loudly in the room. The walls must have been remarkably soundproof, because I'd never heard it bleeding into the main part of the strip club. My eyes scanned the curtains, waiting to see movement so I could see which of my colleagues was good enough for the VIP room, which one was better than me. There was no way I could have anticipated what was about to happen. The curtains didn't move. Someone walked on stage, seemingly stepping right through the concrete wall. She was naked, her slender body hunched over protectively, her arms crossed over her midsection with her hands landing near their opposite shoulders. She was shaking, sobbing. She was translucent. I couldn't really tell just how translucent she was until she reached about halfway up the stage, because the black wall behind her had added an illusion of pigment to her form, like looking at water through a colored glass, or, well, the opposite. But as she moved closer to the pole, I could see the folds in the red curtains behind her, showing through her body. Her entire body looked like it had been washed in an old-timey sepia tone, her hair and skin all a similar burnt brown color. She stopped at the pole and continued to sob. What the hell was I seeing? The boss grunted angrily. "Don't be so shy. Show him your true colors. He paid good money for this." She whimpered quietly, holding herself tighter. She was shaking her head and mouthing the words, "Please, no." The boss stood up and walked over to the stage, placing a hand on his medallion. "I'm giving you one chance. You've seen what'll happen if you don't do what I say." She flinched. The businessman leaned forward on his seat and cupped a hand to his chin, watching with a perverted interest. The boss lost his patience, and the surreal show became even more surreal. He grabbed his stupid, gaudy medallion and jerked on it once. There was a sound like static, followed by what looked like a bolt of red lightning shooting out of him and whipping against the translucent being. She screamed in agony and fell to her knees, balling herself up in the fetal position. "Show us your true colors," whispered the boss, in a terrifyingly stern and slow tone of voice. The ripple of static came back, but this time the girl obeyed. She slowly sat up, her arms releasing her chest and the feet. I had a feeling no one was looking at her breasts, though. There was no reason to stare at her tits when something more magnificent was hiding inside. I don't know how to explain it. It was this vessel of light right in the middle of her chest, like she had swallowed a neon tube or something. It was the purest, lightest blue I've ever seen in my life. Tendrils of light flicked around it like a fire. It was beautiful. It was hypnotic. It was like looking right into her soul. I felt an overwhelming feeling of contentment washing over me, like being in my mother's arms. Then I recognized her face. Sherry. My stomach dropped, yet I couldn't shake the warmth and joy I was experiencing. It was like there were two versions of me in my head. One that was mesmerized, and another who was horrified. "Dance," said the boss. Whimpering, Sherry stood up and began to dance on stage, bearing it all. She had no clothes to hide under, no mask of makeup to wear, no skin to hide behind. She had been stripped in the ultimate sense of the word. I was seeing her very essence, her soul, forced to parade around like a slave for the amusement of some sick son of a bitch. The song came to an end, and when it did, I noticed her beautiful blue light growing just a tad bit duller. The boss waved his hand over his medallion, and Sherry disappeared. The room felt cold. "So, what'd you think?" he asked. The businessman applauded enthusiastically. "Amazing. I can see why you come so highly recommended." The boss ran a hand over his bald head. "And thanks, she's new. Wait till you get a load of one with a bit of experience. The hands-on ones. Ooh, there's something alright. Perhaps next time you find yourself with a bit of pocket change." "I'll pay you right now," interrupted the businessman. "Right now, double what I paid to get in here. Show me another. I want the full package." The boss laughed triumphantly. "You're about to get the best lap dance of your life, my friend." He waved his hand over the medallion. This time, 3 women appeared on the stage. I recognized 2. I thought one had graduated and moved away, and I had been told the other had gotten married to some rich guy. Lies. All lies. The 2 weren't hiding like Sherry had hidden. Their body language seemed a little insecure, but they were exposed. They both had colors inside, just like Sherry. One was a beautiful dark green, and the other was burgundy. I still got a flush of contentment from looking at them, but it was nowhere near as exhilarating as when I looked into Sherry's colored vessel. The third dancer, the one I didn't recognize, had gray on the inside. Out of the 3, she seemed the least bothered by her predicament. She had her legs spread out, her shoulders leaned back, her arms loose at her sides, and the dull light between her breasts exposed for the world to see. A new song was playing, and the trio began to dance like it was going out of style. Damned if I knew how they managed to touch the pole, yet walk through walls, but somehow they managed. They slid up and down and twirled around. I could feel myself getting lost in the movements, eyes transfixed on the 3 lights. I might even have been a little aroused, to be honest. I'm not even into women. There was something in the air. My breaths were shallow and my heart was thrashing. I wanted them. I wanted them so bad. Gray jumped off the stage and began grinding against the businessman without a speck of hesitation. And let's be clear here, I'm not slut-shaming the ghostly stripper. It's just that all the others seemed more guarded, but she had absolutely no restraint whatsoever. I wondered why she was different. She groped her body and presented every piece of it to him. His hands hovered over her translucent flesh tentatively, the only thing stopping him likely being years of having to obey the no-touching rule. "Do it. Reach inside," whispered the boss. The businessman seemed to hesitate for a moment, but then Gray tossed a leg over his lap and began to gyrate her hips seductively. He plunged his hands into her chest and touched the dull light swirling inside. His body arched back as he let out a groan of ecstasy. I could only imagine what it must have felt like, holding the very core of someone in his hands. I pushed myself back against the wall, trying to imagine myself doing the same, trying to experience the rush vicariously through him. I could feel the pressure building inside. Building. I needed release. The room became cold as an explosion of frigid air swept out of Gray like a full-body sneeze. Green and burgundy disappeared. The light in Gray's chest suddenly became black. Instead of flames flickering around it, it now seemed to ooze darkness, like the overflowing tip of an ink pen. Her eyes became hollow, her hair unkempt, and her body seemed to deflate and sharpen, as though her invisible skin and muscles had turned to a thin cloth draped over her bones. She let out an ear-piercing shriek as she lunged towards the businessman's neck, fanged mouth ready to bite down into his skin. The boss clutched his medallion in one hand and snapped his fingers with the other. Red light came pouring out of Gray, but not the same kind of light. It was like she was burning from the inside out. It took only a split second for her body to disintegrate to ashes. The boss chuckled. "Sorry about that. I was sure we'd get at least one more week out of her." The businessman jumped to his feet, his eyes wide with terror. He stuttered. "I assure you, you were in no danger. Here, why don't I sum up anew?" started the boss, but he was quickly interrupted. No more, no." He jumped to his feet and ran out the door without another word. The boss let out a disapproving grunt. "This is your fault." I had no idea who he was talking to, until he turned and looked straight at me. I could feel myself becoming numb. I hadn't noticed the gust of wind had blown half the curtain off of me. I hadn't realized I was standing in plain sight now. He continued, "I suppose it's fortunate you're here. I just so happen to need a replacement. Let's see what your true colors are." He ran towards me. I was literally cornered. There was nothing I could do, nowhere I could run. I tried, of course. I barely had time to take a step to the right before he was on me. His meaty fingers squeezed my throat so hard I thought my head might pop off. I tried to fight him, slapping him and clawing at his arms, but he was bigger and stronger than me. In the one-sided tussle, I noticed a damn tacky medallion swinging from his neck. I grabbed the chain and twisted it in one quick, jerky motion, hoping I could counter-choke him. Instead of tightening around his neck, the chain broke off surprisingly easily, and my arm whipped back violently, sending the medallion crashing against the wall. I heard a crackle as the gemstone broke. I was quickly running out of air. My vision was starting to blur. I thought I was going to die. And then I saw a light. No, not the light at the end of the tunnel. A soft pink light. A light that filled me with a sense of security. Then a pale blue one. Purple. Green. Yellow. More and more lights blinked into existence until we were surrounded by at least a dozen of them, all encased in the silhouettes of busty dancers. They grabbed the boss's fingers and began prying them away from my throat. I fell to the ground and gasped for air as they pulled him away from me. Gagging and coughing, I crawled to the bar and grabbed the first ball I laid hands on. I found the strength to force myself to my feet and staggered to the boss, now being held down on his knees by the spectral dancers. He would never do this to anyone else. I was going to make sure of it. I'm not a violent person. I wouldn't hurt his soul. Good thing he didn't have one. He was a monster. I swung the bottle at his face with all my might. Surprisingly, it didn't break like you see in the movies. The boss screamed profanities at me as the blood began to ooze out of his nose. He kept trying to break free, but with a dozen of his victims pinning him down, he wasn't going anywhere. He deserved every bludgeoning strike to the head. He deserved the bruises and the swelling. He deserved the humiliation. I kept at it until he stopped moving. Once I thought he was dead, or at least unconscious. I dropped the bloodied bottle and backed into the curtains. It was over, or so I thought. The girls might have saved me, but they didn't do it entirely for altruistic purposes. I found that out when they dragged him to the stage and started tearing away his clothes, exposing his disgusting, blubbery body. I remember thinking it was going to be hard to explain this to the police. Turns out, by the time they were done with him, I wouldn't have to. See, once his clothes were off, they continued. They started peeling away his skin like a used band-aid. The strips of flesh burned away as soon as they were pulled, and in their place I could see the same brownish translucent skin. Part of me was disappointed he was too dead to feel the pain, but I wasn't disappointed for long. As soon as they pulled a strip of flesh away from his mouth, I saw the astral version of his mouth open wide. He was screaming, a silent scream of agony. That was more like it. He was aware of what was happening to him. He could feel every little tug. Good. They stripped away the flesh from his chest, revealing a disgusting brown nugget where his color should have been. It barely had any light to it. It just looked like digested filth. The girls kept his arms for last, and as I watched them expose the most private parts of him, I wondered why. It was so he wouldn't cover up. It was to make sure he'd feel the humiliation of everyone seeing his true colors, his disgusting innards. As soon as his arms were free of his real skin, he covered up and started sobbing like a giant bald baby. Now the girls were vindicated. They slowly backed away, and one by one the lights went out and they disappeared. I'd like to think they moved on to a better place. At the very least, that their torment was over. As for the boss, I remembered the extra medallion he kept in his office. I wasn't sure exactly how to use it, but after waving it around him a few times, his silhouette disappeared. So I think I managed to trap him inside the same way he trapped the girls. I kept his gaudy medallion. I'd like to say I did it to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, but I'm not going to lie. A part of me really needs to see those true colors again. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and share to help feed the dark machine.